Welcome to a deep dive into, well, a really fascinating corner of specialized animal breeding. Today, we're looking at an exclusive interview with Pat Patrick. Now, this is a man known in his field for having bred more champions than almost anyone else alive, specifically within the world of what the source material calls pit dogs. Our mission here is to kind of unpack his methods, his philosophy, and maybe some of the surprising details behind how you build a legacy like that. What does it actually mean to create a champion? And how do you handle all the complexities of genetics, the performance, the reputation in such a unique and, let's face it, demanding field?
Yeah, what's really compelling, I think, is just how much detail Patrick goes into about his own process. He gives us specific examples, real insights into a world that's driven by very particular definitions of quality and what makes a champion. So we'll focus on the specific traits he was looking for, the bloodlines he developed, and the relationships that kind of shaped his record. It's all straight from his own words in the source. You'll hear about specific dogs, their unique characteristics, and how they really contributed to his, well, unparalleled success.
Okay, so let's start with the man himself. Pat Patrick's reputation. The source calls it incredible, noting he's bred probably more champions than any other man alive. That's quite a statement. We're talking dogs like STP's Grand Champion BUCK, Lewis's Grand Champion Catfish, his own Champion Assassin. I mean, that's a serious list right off the bat. What does that immediate recognition tell us about his contribution here?
Well, it immediately sets the stage, doesn't it? It shows his specific impact. The source points out his main stud dogs, Indian Bolio and Patrick's Tombstone. They weren't just great performers, described as game-winning pit dogs. In Patrick's hands, they became, and this is the key phrase, first-class producers. That distinction is crucial. It tells you he wasn't just spotting talent. He was amplifying it through a very deliberate breeding strategy. And it's important context. The source does describe these dogs in relation to fighting dogs, and Patrick himself talks about obeying strict laws as part of how he operated his breeding program.
Right, and building a line like that, it doesn't happen instantly. Patrick definitely didn't start with some magic formula. He talks about his initial purchases. It's like a rundown of foundational dogs from that era. Tater and Faith from Keith Allen, Goldie from Indian Sunny, Diamond from Maurice Carver, Tombstone from Don Mayfield, Dolly from Don Maloney, Grand Champion Hank from Danny Burton. And his very first dog, back in '67 from Adolf Torres, was, as the source says, bred for fighting just as their ancestors had been bred for perhaps more than 22 years. So what does this early sort of casting a wide net approach tell us about his journey?
It really emphasizes the evolution, I think. He stressed it was a matter of trial and error. He wasn't afraid to say he tried lots of different bloodlines. He eventually landed on the Maloney, Bolio, and the Tater and Faith lines because, as he puts it, they consistently produce a high percentage of good to great bulldogs. He also had specific preferences, like favoring Indian Sunny's Corvino dog, Crusher, and old Carver dogs that had little or no Bullyson bloodlines. It's very specific genetics.
Interesting.
And getting Tombstone, that wasn't just a whim either. It came after strong recommendations from other respected California dogmen. That's the term used for experienced breeders and handlers in this world.
So after all that experimentation, when it came down to choosing dogs for his program, Patrick had this incredibly clear, almost non-negotiable list of traits. He flat out states gameness is the most important thing. And he defines it very precisely as the desire to keep fighting when a dog is hurt, tired, and losing.
That's quite a benchmark.
It's absolutely central to his whole philosophy. You could see that everything else kind of builds on that. After gameness, his next priority was endurance, or what he also called stamina, or natural air. Beyond those, he looked for a smart fighting dog, one that could adapt. Plus, the physical tools. Speed, strength, and good balance for wrestling, and a hard bite that wouldn't fade.
Right.
He also liked a good finisher, and importantly, a good head fighter. He actually singles out Indian Bolio as the best head fighter he'd ever seen, calls him the best all-around fighting dog, pound for pound, even pushing back against claims others might make about different dogs. Okay, Indian Bolio, you just mentioned him. Clearly a pivotal dog for Patrick. But the story of how Patrick actually got him is, well, it's pretty unusual. The source says Bolio was taken from Indian Sunny's yard after some kind of dispute with some people. Patrick is very clear. He says he had no part in this. But then the people who took Bolio apparently had trouble keeping him because he bit a kid.
Oof.
Yeah. So they ended up bringing the dog to Patrick's place for safekeeping. Quite the roundabout way to acquire a foundation stud.
A very interesting turn of events, yeah. But once Bolio was with Patrick, what's really striking is the sheer impact he had as a producer. Patrick lists 21 notable offspring. Just to give you a flavor, there's C.H. Dre, described as extremely rough, hard-biting, dead game dog.
Yeah.
Kincaid's C.H. Princess, apparently almost unbeatable at 39 pounds. And C.H. Dagon, who the source describes, and again, we're relaying the source's descriptions here within their context, as having killed dogs in less than 30 minutes. Then there's Patrick's Red Baby, who is not only talented herself, a very talented, hard-biting head dog, but also produced many good dogs herself.
Yeah.
And El Dospitz Cortaro, an inbred son of Bolio, noted as very game with great natural air, though apparently never matched for money. This list just hammers home Bolio's massive genetic footprint on Patrick's lines.
And alongside Bolio, there was Tombstone, another absolutely key stud dog in Patrick's setup. The source describes him as a deep game dog that won a come-from-behind fight against a dog considered unbeatable back when he was with Don Mayfield. You know, that kind of performance, winning when you're down, that says a lot about an animal's core attributes.
Absolutely. And that performance record clearly justified Patrick's choice to make him a cornerstone. The results when Tombstone was bred to Bolio's daughter, Red Baby, they were exceptional. That specific cross-produced C.H. Tonka, described as a very hard-biting nose dog. It also produced C.H., Snubby, Wilson C.H. Crash, and Dugan's A-Lie. And interestingly, they all shared a similar head-fighting style. Patrick even mentions that 8 pups from that one Tombstone X Red Baby litter won a collective 17 matches, with only 1 loss between them.
Incredible consistency.
Right. And Tombstone also sired Lewis's GR-CH Hope, noted for her blend of wrestling and hard-biting, stamina and gameness, and C.H. Tuffy, who was strong with good air and plenty of gameness. It just shows Tombstone reliably passed on those critical traits.
Patrick eventually bought C.H. Tonka himself later in the dog's life, about 7 or 8 years old, from Ronnie Anderson. He said he was convinced by 2 things. Tonka's amazing pedigree, being out of Tombstone and Red Baby.
That power cross.
Exactly. And second, his proven record. He was known as both a very good fighting dog and a hell of a producer. But it seems Patrick ran into some issues, some frustration regarding Tonka's formal recognition.
He certainly did. And this touches on, the internal dynamics and recognition systems within these specialized communities. Patrick lists several champion Ostu, from Tonka, C.H. Sean, C.H. Billy, T.H. Buchan, major producers.
Right.
Yet, he expresses real frustration that C.H. Tonka himself isn't officially recognized as a ROM, that's Register of Merit, a big deal for acknowledging a stud's producing ability, and the main sporting dog journal at the time. He calls it, and this is his quote, a real ripoff.
Wow.
And he even hints at regional bias, saying if he were a Georgia-bred dog, he would be. So it really highlights those potential politics and, perceived biases that can crop up.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It also sounds like Patrick wasn't working in isolation. He was clearly embedded in a network of other breeders and handlers, these dogmen, as the source calls them. He talks about his relationships. He considered Ronnie Anderson a friend. He regretted not getting more dogs from Maurice Carver, who he thought had the best dog yard in the world for a period, maybe 68 to 78.
High praise.
And he respected Indian Sonny for his knowledge and bloodlines, and also Carl Wynn.
Yeah, it gives you a real sense of the community, the interconnectedness, the shared knowledge, even if it's within a very specific, maybe even closed-off world. He mentions others too, like Floyd Boudreau, Gary Hammonds, and Bobby Smith, whom Patrick calls one of the very best dog men in the USA, praising his knowledge and honesty.
Okay.
He even mentions Ron Ovalink over in Europe, calling him a very intelligent breeder. And Patrick's final advice for newcomers really reflects his own journey and this network aspect. He basically says, buy the best breeding bitches you can find and breed them to the best males in the country. Even if it means traveling and paying big stud fees. And crucially, learn from experienced people. Don't try to reinvent the wheel entirely alone.
Which brings us to a fundamental question in breeding, really in any pursuit of excellence. What matters more, the pedigree, the lineage, or the individual's performance? For Patrick, the answer was surprisingly definite. He saw them as equal in importance.
Exactly. No choosing one over the other.
He explained that, yeah, sometimes you might get a fantastic dog, a very good dog, from a less impressive background, a throwback, he called it. But, he argued, that kind of dog is never a good producer when it comes to breeding consistently.
It really highlights his no-compromise approach. He stated very clearly he wouldn't use a pit ACE for breeding, meaning, a dog proven outstanding in performance, as the source describes it, if that dog didn't also have a solid pedigree.
Right.
And conversely, he wouldn't use a superbred dog on paper if that dog wasn't game, if it lacked that core quality he valued most, For the best results, he needed both.
Makes sense.
And this is where the legal context comes in again.
Yeah.
Patrick states that because of strict laws, he can't roll or match dogs, his words for testing or fighting them, and that he obeys these laws. He clarifies, though, that his breeding stock is all proven game, even if someone else did the testing.
Ah, okay. So the proof came from before he owned them or from other breeders.
Seems so. He emphasizes that while he cannot legally fight dogs or sell them to fight, in his view, it's not illegal to breed proven game dogs or retired champions.
Mm.
And he uses C.H. Tonka, who won his matches elsewhere before Patrick bought him, as the prime example of this principle in practice under the law at that time.
So fast forward to the time of the interview. Who did Patrick consider the top dog in his yard then?
He named Patrick's Homer.
Homer.
Homer is a son of Eldas Bits. Remember, the inbred Bolio son and a bitch named Romero's Cricket, whose parents, Patrick notes, are dead game.
So stack pedigree again.
Absolutely. He describes Homer as a great little dog and says his pups are turning out to be very game-talented dogs.
Mm-hmm.
He expected Homer to make RM soon, continuing that legacy.
It shows that consistent application of his principles over decades.
Definitely. And it leads to one final interesting point he makes about breeding genetics. The age-old question, stud dog versus brood bitch, which is more important? Patrick's take. Both male and female are equally important.
50-50.
Exactly.
Yeah.
His logic is simple. They both contribute 50% on average to the genetic makeup of the pups, which just reinforces his core belief.
Yeah.
For top-tier results, both the pedigree and quality of the individual dog must be of first class. No shortcuts.
Well, we've certainly taken a deep dive into the, let's say, intense and highly specialized world of breeding champion pit dogs, really seen through the unique lens of Pat Patrick. His profound grasp of genetics, that relentless chase for very specific qualities like gameness, and his whole trial and error journey, it really does set him apart.
Yeah, what we've really unpacked today is like a masterclass in selective breeding, albeit in a very specific context. It shows how deep knowledge of lineage, careful observation of individual traits and performance, and just a crystal clear vision can lead to, well, extraordinary results. Patrick's interview gives us a truly fascinating look at what it takes to cultivate excellence when the standards are so incredibly demanding.
So thinking about all this, what really stands out to you listening in? After hearing about Patrick's intense methods, from his precise definition of gameness to how he strategically used those key bloodlines like Bolio and Tombstone, what does this deep dive suggest about the nature of excellence itself? What does it truly mean to be a champion, not just in this specific world of dog breeding, but maybe in any field where that raw potential, that grit, that genetic legacy, and the relentless pursuit of quality all have to come together?